Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the Powercat Podcast. Today it's me, Tim Fitzgerald, Ryan Gilbert, Cole Carmody, all in our little home studios. Isn't this adorable? Ryan Gilbert, you just got back from Jerome Tang. What did Coach Tang have to say in synopsis, right? Did you make it real short and succinct?
Can I get the Otter AI generated recap? Can I use that real quick, Fitz?
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Okay? No.
Yeah, that'd be great.
No, there really wasn't a whole lot. I think it was kind of less about the team right now. There was a lot of Max Jones talk and just kind of getting like a GM for his team. And obviously we talked about the team a little bit, but yeah, it'll be up on our YouTube channel by the time you're watching this. So go check that out without a doubt.
Very good. Today's podcast is going to be a little bit like the old one. We've shortened these up and we kind of zoned in on specific topics with our podcast as of late, but we got a little bit of everything. And of course, the Friday shoot around will be coming on Friday morning, actually midnight, Thursday, Friday.
Oh, hang on. A little later in the day on Friday. Clint had oral surgery, so we'll get it to you. It just may not
Clint's
be
a surgeon and he does it with his mouth. That's incredible.
I believe the term is mouth surgery, Ryan, but yes.
Okay. Well, the Friday shoot around will be a little bit later on Friday because Clint doesn't care about the quality of our product and went and got face surgery here during the most important time of his life on Go Powercat. I might have just lost a basketball analyst with that little rant. So, yeah, it'll come out Friday, but that doesn't matter for you folks. It's okay because the game's on Sunday. You can go to church and go watch your cats. You can praise the Lord and then curse him at Bramlage.
For folks who are keeping track at home, I will be going to church on Sunday. It's just Ryan Gilbert's former employer will be my church on Sunday. I will be in Manhattan for the game. Your former employer.
Raising Cane's?
Yeah, no, not Raising Cane's. I have a nice little lunch, make my way over to the stadium. It's a 3:00 game, so should be a pretty good crowd on hand. But I will be at church. So my church is not worshiping the Lord, it's worshiping tacos.
Absolutely. Get yourself a Nancy and a couple of El Mexicanos and you are good to go.
Make sure you do a little prayer for me while you're there. Right there. You can just look at me on the wall and say, oh, yeah. Let's get going with your questions. Cole's going to do the reading today because I'm not capable.
I wouldn't go that far, but we do have a question, Fitz, that is perfect for you. It says, tell me more about the college basketball crown in Vegas this spring. Is it a likely destination from the Cats? That is from our friend El Camino Cat.
Well, first of all, this is pretty cool. This is the Fox event, 16 teams that rivals the NIT. They are tied into, let me get this right, I think it's the Big 10, the Big 12, and the Big East. I think that's the three conferences, and those three conferences will provide two teams each. Oh, yeah, those are the conferences with which they've got contracts. So each of those conferences will get two teams each on top of whatever goes the NIT and the NCAA. And the entire event takes place in Las Vegas. Now, let me tell you about our travel rules at Go Powercat. If they make the NCAA tournament, we go anywhere that they go. It can be kind of expensive, like the year that they went to Dayton and 2 days later played in Sacramento. That was not fun to pay for, but we did because it's the NCAA tournament. We do not travel with the NIT, so by extension, we wouldn't travel with any other event except this one's in Vegas. So we might go to this one. Hey, Coach Tang, I know you're watching. Could you put that into your calculations? If you end up not making the NCAA tournament, what would Fitz like? It's a legitimate question that not enough people ask, and the answer is Vegas.
Can I come?
Yeah, yes, you get to go too, because I need someone to do
though.
the work.
Okay, I'll do the work. I mean, I think I don't have a crystal ball, but I think in the future you're probably looking at maybe this being the Power 5 tournament, right? And then the NIT being that mid-major, low conference tournament, right? Now, we'll see where things go. Obviously, I think this is a real unique idea. And if you can maybe generate some more buzz, I know the NIT, playing in the NIT, there's a lot of fans that that don't like that, right? I think if you're playing in this, Vegas, like you said, Fitz, it's certainly something that's a little more intriguing than just the NIT.
Part of it too, guys, is it has to do with the pecking order of teams. And right now, K-State would actually be on the outside looking into that. If you look at, okay, who's all going to make who's all going to make the NCAA tournament? You're looking at about 8 teams probably from the Big 12, I think. Obviously, if K-State doesn't make it, then you're looking at 8 teams. Maybe a team like TCU jumps in there, but then they're going to take, what is it? They said two teams from the Big 12. And if K-State is not one of those 2 teams that just misses the NCAA tournament, because from everything we've heard, this is going to be the tournament that takes precedent over the NIT in the Big 12. So if they're not one of those 2 teams that just missed out on the NCAA tournament, then you're probably looking at the NIT. However, like last year, it wouldn't surprise me if some of these schools reject a bid to this college basketball crown, if you may. And so I actually think there's a good chance that if K-State doesn't make the NCAA tournament, when you just look at their schedule the rest of the way, maybe they're not a bowl team, but they could definitely be that second team that makes this field. And you know what? It might be kind of an interesting end to the season for them.
Well, it was mentioned early on that the net will be used to pick the highest 2 that were left out. I don't know if that bodes well for K-State, but there's not a limit of 2 either. It's 2, 2, and 2, and then 10 at-large bids, which also can be from major conferences. Mm-hmm. It will be interesting on Selection Sunday day when that's done and everyone knows who's off the board for the NCAA tournament. These 2 tournaments are going to be battling each other to bring in teams. It'll be very interesting. What I find intriguing about this is there's elements here we don't know. I don't know what kind of travel expense are getting paid, what kind of hotel expense is getting paid, all those things, because competing in the NIT can be expensive. You pay a lot of those expenses. The event doesn't generate that much money. This one might. I don't know. I think it'll get more attendance because it's all centrally located. You got 16 fan bases all, if you get, a couple hundred from each fan base, you got a decent crowd. And we'll see how this all plays out. But I think this means there's more opportunity for Kansas State. But as Cole said, also a lot of people just flat turn down postseason bids if they're not the NCAA now, just to start focusing in on next season, which I don't know if that's a great idea.
And before we move on, guys, I know there's something to think about. People go to Vegas during March for March Madness, mm-hmm. right? They go to Vegas to gamble. I would have to imagine that a lot of those gamblers, oh, hey, there's a game that's going on right down the street that you can get into for $10. That might be something that would be very appealing to even, the non-school fan to just go see some live basketball in Vegas. Maybe while March Madness is going on, if there's a down period or whatever. So it's interesting to see how this is scheduled.
You know what, Gilbert, I feel like just to protect us, I should reserve a room.
Yeah, might as well. And also for UCF, even if we're not going, you might as well just get a room there for us to go for a little vacation.
Let's look at it this way. If they don't make the NCAA tournament and then they turn down the postseason tournament, we're done. Well, might as well go to Vegas.
Absolutely.
Can't afford it. We got this Irish trip looming like a financial disaster for me. I'm looking forward to that. Cole, go to the next question before I just totally go off the rails.
That's a great question. From ContraCat, what is your best guess for men's basketball players' retention? Will some get offers to go elsewhere, and can we keep them if we want to? Gilbert?
Well, guys, there's one that's very obvious. We all know is not going to be back. I think probably Ugo is maybe a coin flip, maybe 50-50. I'd probably lean on him not returning, but I think there's a world in which you can create a scenario in which Ugo does return, right? But other than Buddy Rich, I could see everybody else returning, right? I mean, Max Jones, they talked about that, like I said, on Thursday in the press conference that, like, guys, I think Max Jones is probably Tank's favorite player on this team. Like, he's just a hard-nosed worker, a fighter, somebody that would have fit in very nicely at Baylor.
Agreed.
On his teams there. So I think Max Jones is a guy that they're going to fight to get back with that extra year of eligibility. Brendan Hazen, where else are you going to go, right? CJ Jones, where else are you going to go?
CJ have another year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I've seen him senior.
I think everybody, I mean, by fall, even the guys that aren't necessarily playing, right? I think by fall you're probably looking at a Dorian Finister situation where I think he's been shut down, and you're going to hope for some sort of medical red shirt. I'm not an expert in that area, right? But they're going to try to maintain this season for his eligibility, somebody that they want long-term, right? I think that was always kind of the plan for Bai, was to be he wasn't a flyer, but he was not polished when he came out from Arkansas, right? He's a former McDonald's All-American, so his potential speaks for itself. And then, am I missing any?
Doug McDaniel,
right? You asked me this 2 months ago. No way in hell.
No way.
But here we are, man. I mean, when him and Jerome Tang are on the same page, I think K-State's at its best when McDaniel's bought in and Tang believes in him and he's playing well, right? So David Castillo, again, he hasn't got the minutes that he maybe wants, but he's a freshman. He's mature enough to understand that you've got to work and be patient. So what I'm getting at here, guys, is other than Buddy Rich, there's not a guarantee he's gone.
Where do you think Taj is at?
Man, I think Taj just loves Kansas State, right?
I do too.
He knows, he's got to know, right, that he's probably never going to be in this rotation consistently right now. You go back to last year, he started the first game against USC and then obviously tapered off. But, you never know. But you're looking at a guy that, just loves Kansas State, and not everybody just wants to play, right? Not everybody. If you just want to be a part of a Power 5 team, he's from Kansas City, right? By all means. So I don't know what's in Taj's head. I to be honest, guys, I haven't heard anything. But even if he does leave, it's not like that's any sort of a meaningful departure anyway, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back and just remains that presence in the locker room either. So I don't know there, but we'll see.
Here's a little tidbit, guys. I have been in a similar position to Taj Manning with the transfer portal. I know. You guys find that hard to believe. The year was 1979 or 80. So way back when I rode my cover wagon to school. Look, we had a really good basketball class. My class was really talented. And I was never going to be able to play varsity basketball at Salina Central. And I almost transferred to Sacred Heart, the smaller Catholic school in town, but I stayed out of the transfer portal and stuck with the school I loved. But it came down to this for me, in all seriousness. I didn't want to abandon my friends and everything I knew and just to play basketball. Do I regret? Because I think I was pretty decent. Do I regret not doing it? Sometimes, but also there's like a chain of events that happens. What happens after that? I mean, so I'm glad I didn't do it because I may not know you guys. Well, now I kind of regret it now I think about it. But
me.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how much I screwed up my life, I think he would have ended up in it. So, it's going to come down to that. Is he really committed to playing college basketball? If so, what level does he see himself at? And does he want to be a student at that level? That's just a legitimate question. I think some athletes actually ask themselves.
And you got to think about it like this too, guys. There's nothing that says that Taj Manning can't next year come off the bench for 5-6 minutes a game as a junior. I mean, he still has 2 more years of eligibility. And so there's a lot of development that can still take place. I mean, for as much as we want to sit here and say, oh, he'll never play, like maybe, but on the off chance that he does turn into maybe a rotational piece, why can't he come and provide energy off the bench and have that role that Moby Ike-Uruka has this year, where he plays 5 minutes a game, but they're impactful minutes. And then by the time he's a senior, he's contributing. I think of a guy like Nino Williams, who, Ryan, you remember Nino, hardly ever played his first few years. And then by the time he was a senior, he was a starter. I don't think Taj Manning will ever be a starter, but I do still think that there's something in there. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had him on this team for 3 years, right?
Yeah, there's something there. There is.
So I like that, but I agree with you guys. I think Buddy Rich is probably the only one. I do want to address this other part of the question. Offers to go somewhere else. I think people will be after Doug McDaniel, guys. Like that's going to be someone who I think, if there's anybody that's on this roster who people around college basketball might be trying to reach out to, I think Doug McDaniels he's kind of opened some eyes this year. Not that he didn't while he was at Michigan, but his turn it into an all-around basketball player. It wouldn't surprise me if that's a guy who, we're sitting here in April and May saying, well, we think he's going to come back, but there's some other factors that are determining that.
If I had to pick one, I would go David Castillo. And Doug McDaniel, coaches talk and word spreads about off the court, right? There's baggage there with Doug McDaniel. There is, and coaches are going to know that, right? It's probably going to be much easier to say, hey, David Castillo, you played, you had 3 games all year in which you played more than 10 minutes, right? Whatever it may be, right? Come to our school. We'll get you in, right? Like, so I would be more concerned about David Castillo just in that regard. But a couple of guys you mentioned earlier, Cole, Taj Manning, Drum Tank said he was a future all-conference player, right? Like, no, that's probably not, it's not going to happen, but still, Drum Tank, this was in his first year, right? He said that. So I think he views a lot in his future. And then Moby, I didn't mention Moby, but that one absolutely goes without saying that, especially given that JUCO eligibility that's going on, 100% Moby will be back.
Yep.
We've got a little optical illusion going on that's bugging the hell out of me. Cole, your plaque on your wall seems to be coming directly out of Ryan Gilbert's black sign.
Oh,
and,
wow.
And as his head gets near it, I'm like, oh, he's going to knock it off the wall. Oh, he's going to knock it off. See, like that. It's good.
That's good.
Losing my
If
mind.
you're listening on Spotify, apologize.
Frank would appreciate
If
that.
you're listening anywhere, I apologize.
Next question. After the round of football coaching changes, at this point, do you see the changes as an upgrade, downgrade, or status quo? That is from Harry Dangler.
Thank you, Harry. I love our names on our board. I don't know, Harry. I really don't know. It's hard to rate it an upgrade when you lose Connor Riley, who's a great offensive line coach. But I think we can agree he was a distracted offensive line coach for part of last year, and they didn't play as well as they have. Maybe it was personnel and he wasn't distracted, and maybe I'm completely wrong. I think they have put in place a really strong coaching staff. But if that line drops off, whether it's coaching or just talent, it's going to get blamed on coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's going to be a really hard place to succeed. But I think this group really could have an opportunity. And let's be honest, if Matt Wells comes in here and has more, what's the word I'm looking for? Flow to his offense, a little more understanding of, maybe planning ahead, setting things up. Some of the stuff that I didn't think Connor did very well in his first year of being an offensive coordinator, I think it would have come eventually, but people didn't want to wait. And I understand that. If that's better, I think it'll also make fans feel better about this.
I think this is an upgrade, and just because your offensive coordinator is it's more important than your offensive line coach. Connor Riley is a tremendous offensive line coach, but I 100% will make the argument that Matt Wells will be a better simply as an offensive coordinator than Riley. So you're losing a damn good offensive line coach, but I'd still take, if I had to pick one, I'm taking the offensive coordinator that I'm more confident in. And I think Matt Wells is going to kill it.
I agree with that, guys. I'm going to say that I think all 3 of these things can be correct at the same time. I think that it's an upgrade with Matt Wells from a recruiting standpoint. I think it's an upgrade with Luke Wells from a recruiting standpoint. I think it might be an upgrade with Matt Wells from a play calling standpoint. But there's no denying that, this is nothing against Brian LePack. You're downgrading at the offensive line position and the tight end position just by moving LePack over to the offensive line. And you're not obviously replacing Connor Riley. There's not a lot of guys who can coach, in the NFL as an offensive line coach, just walking on the street, right? That's not the case. And so it's going to be impossible to replace what Connor Riley brought to that room. But I think overall, I do think that the arrow is probably ticking slightly up, if not right at status quo. Because I think what you lose in your offensive line coach, what you lose in that veteran presence, you probably regain with a play calling ability and with recruiting wise. And so I'm really high on Matt Wells. I think he's got an opportunity to be really, really good in this role. Guys, let's not forget, Matt Wells doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of experience. He doesn't have a huge track record when it comes to just simply being an offensive coordinator. And so you can look at that one of 2 ways. One way you can look at it is he doesn't have a lot of experience. The other way you can look at it is he's going to bring some fresh ideas because he hasn't had this opportunity to just worry about coaching the offense. So, guys, I'm pretty fired up about it.
Look, let me add this. I've got this philosophy about offensive lines that I've used with K-State a number of times. And it involves when you take a guard like Dalton Reisner or Cody Whitehair and shift him to tackle because he's the best candidate you have at tackle. My problem with that has always been you had an all-conference guard and now you don't. And you've got an okay tackle and an okay guard. I'd rather probably have a less okay tackle and an all-American / Big 12 guard. And Lepac's kind of that guy. We've now shifted him over with this exception. He's actually a tackle. I mean, he is. This offensive line is what he coaches, what he wants to coach, what his background's in. So I think he's been playing out of position. So maybe that isn't the right comparison, but I do think you're losing an incredible tight end coach to plug him in at the offensive line where you had an incredible offensive line coach. And how will that add up? Honestly, only time will tell.
It's kind of like when Cooper Beebe was really good at tackle, and we were like, "Oh, he's going to be he's a really good offensive tackle." And they're like, "Well, just wait till he plays guard." And then they finally had room to put him at guard, and they're like, "Oh, okay, I see it now."
And yet that wasn't even his position.
Right. Now he's playing center in the NFL. Yeah, crazy how that works. Next question here from Go Stay Kate. Will the pre-NIL era of college athletics be looked back on like the steroid era in baseball? Do the cheaters need an asterisk? Now, I think this question's tongue-in-cheek, guys. If I know Go Stay Kate, he's probably referencing the University of Kansas. So I'm just going to put that out there right now. But this is a great question. This is right up my alley. But yeah, I'm interested what you guys think.
Here's the difference is the steroids were illegal. I mean, they weren't supposed to be doing them, and they were. Or were they? I don't know if that was illegal now I think about it, but it was seen as a form of cheating. This won't be. This won't, because this was within the rules. Now, the way the NIL has been used for just paying players, which Kansas State's done also, would probably fall under that reflection. This was the comparison I made earlier this week on talk radio. This is a gold rush. And if you were in the right place at the right time during one of the gold rushes in our history, you came away very wealthy. And in some cases, that's generational wealth that still exists today. It changed lives. This has been a gold rush. And if you were coming out of high school at the right time or in college basketball or football at the right time, you cashed in. But the gold's drying up. And the rush is almost over with these changes in the revenue sharing and how the NIL will be used. There'll still be NIL, but it will be used exclusively for actual name, image, and likeness. And this is, according to the NCAA, something they're going to enforce. So you can't just pay a player to come. It needs to be some type of advertising opportunity or something that you're lending your image to, your name to promote something. And that will still be around, but I think there would be a lot less money for that than what we've seen.
Gilbert?
I mean, I agree, man. I don't necessarily have a strong opinion or take one way or another. I think that's something I've learned in this job is if I don't have a strong opinion, I agree with you, Fitz. I think the easiest answer is we'll see in 5, 10, 50 years. We'll see how this kind of all ends up. And no, I don't think, like you mentioned, Fitz, is it cheating? No, it's right now you are doing what is technically within the rules at this given moment. So I don't have a strong opinion really one way or another.
I'm going to pull this question back up just so you guys can track what I'm about to say. So the question says, will the pre-NIL era of college athletics be looked back on like the steroid era? I'm actually going to take this question another way. I'm going to say we are in the steroid era right now because everything is legal. Everything is free game, right? Before the steroid era in baseball, you had some people who were doing it, but it wasn't as noticeable until they started to realize, oh, if you take this, if you shoot this, then you are going to have an advantage. You're going to be able to hit the baseball farther. You're going to be able to throw harder. And so what happened? Everybody started to take it, and it was free game. Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire. I'll use this example. Mark McGwire was a damn good baseball player with the Oakland A's. Then he got to the St. Louis Cardinals, and he started shooting up, and his muscles started getting 4 times bigger, and he started hitting 75 home runs a year. What is Ohio State doing? They were really good before the NIL era. They were winning national championships. Oh, but now they have an influx in cash. So what can they do? They can use all of this money to buy a brand new team every single year. Guys, we are in the steroid era for baseball right now with this NIL era, and with this hopefully new legislation that's going to come down, it's going to eliminate some of that. And so, again, baseball is right up my era. I'm pretty passionate about this, if you can't tell, but that's when we're going to be able to see, okay, now they're actually able to enforce things. Guys are going to be no longer able to take steroids. Then we're going to look back and be like, how the hell were college athletics able to survive this era?
You know what? I read that question backwards. He was saying the cheating was happening before NIL. Yeah, I to a degree, but it was just so long-term and such a normal part of the game. I see what you're saying, but it has even the tables, any team that was bringing in players through questionable tactics now has a lot of competition for those same players.
Yep. You know what's interesting, though, guys? NIL for Kansas State basketball, I don't think has been an overall plus, right? Jerome Tang and his program was better off in year number 1 than in years number 2 and 3 when it had more access to NIL money. So, yes, Cole, you mentioned Ohio State, and there are absolutely programs that benefit a lot from it, but the grass is not always greener when you can just wave a magic wand and go get guys based off of money. You've got to stay true to the values that all that stuff, the traits that you value in guys, get them in your program for the right reasons and not just for money. I'm not saying that is necessarily why anyone's here in Manhattan on this basketball team was just for money. I'm not saying that, but it's definitely changed things up when this staff had a lot more money at its disposal. You're seeing a team that missed the NCAA tournament in year number 2, and then more than likely, unless they get things turned around here, in year number 3 as well.
The stars are the stars. The stars are the stars. The stars were always the stars, but when they get an advantage, those stars shine brighter. You're right. It doesn't always work for the little guys, just like it did in the steroid era for baseball.
Cool. Let's just do one more. Let's get that going.
Sweet. All right. The last question here. It says, can the Athletics raise ticket prices to fund NIL revenue sharing? Joe Castiglione from OU is appealing to fans for assistance, so it's not just a problem for us. From Claff 1964.
Okay, so this was a much longer question. He was also saying, look, they're going to add a beer garden. They're going to do some other stuff, but that doesn't raise $21.5 million. I think ticket prices are going to have to go up. There's no doubt. I do think they'll do beer sales. I would encourage them to do beer sales at a reasonable price, because if you want people to stay in the stadium, give them a reason to not go to their car. Look, you won't be able to re-enter, but in a bad game, they will just leave. Their cheap beer will outweigh bad football. So I think you need to have some balance there. But I think we're going to see athletics try to get their fingers in a number of different things. Will we see them maybe branch out into events, hosting? We're seeing that with Oklahoma State. Now Baylor's doing a concert type thing. That's possible. In fact, I'm kind of working behind the scenes on something. I don't know if it'll come to pass. But they're going to have to get creative in how they raise money. If K-State could have easily expanded their budget by $21.5 million in the past, it would have been done. This is going to be painful. And we're all going to have to row together here. They're going to have to raise this money, or they're going to have to figure out what the future of Kansas State athletics is, because they're already at the minimum number of sports. They have agreed to raise a number of scholarships in football and basketball and other places. I think Gene Taylor said it was 50 new scholarships, which are now permissible under the NCAA rules. That's really cool. But this rev share at $21.5 million will be divided up mostly between football, men's basketball, and then a share to women's basketball. And there might be a little something for everyone else. I don't know. But the rev share is going to go to the rev producers, period. That's football, and then men's basketball, and then women's basketball. Don't give me attendance on women's basketball. The tickets are much cheaper. People are paying seat licenses to have seating in areas. It's radically different in the amount of revenue produced. So this is going to be a real stress. It's going to be a pain. But if you as fan bases are committed to, as a fan base, are committed to competing at the highest level, this is the price. The bill is right there on the table. And so that's something K-State fans are going to need to address or deal with. But I think Gene Taylor's the right guy to do it. He's kind of calmly putting everything in place. If you want a lot more information on all this, Ask the AD is out. It's a 3-parter. The third part, though, addressed a lot of this. You can go find that at kstatesports.com or on YouTube with their K-State Sports channel. So it's all out there where Gene Taylor lays it out, because this is a big deal. And if Oklahoma, this is a perfect example. If Oklahoma is stressed, everyone's going to be, because in the SEC, that number is not going to be 21.5. That's the bottom. You better believe Georgia's going to be doing more. Alabama's going to want to do more. Any school with a lot of money and the donors willing to step up, they're going to be doing $40 million in rev share. And you need to, because it's a rev share with all your athletes. K-State offers a minimum number of sports and some low scholarship sports at that. So that money's going to go a lot farther. But if you're trying to give money to everyone and you offer 30 sports, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage in recruiting in some of those sports, because little old K-State might be offering your volleyball players more money.
Yeah, you mentioned the Ask the AD with Gene, and you touched on beer sales and stuff like that. But, guys, Bramlage, Gene Taylor mentioned, is just Fred Bramlage Coliseum, right? There's money to be made there in the naming rights, and also on the football field. He said that last year, I think it was like right at the start of the season or something, you're allowed to put, sponsors now on the football field as well. So they couldn't get around to it, but moving forward, that's absolutely something that can be explored as well.
And I don't know how the Big 12 works with licensing. We probably need Zach back for that. But jerseys, guys, I know they talked about this with the Big 12. At some point, we're going to see some advertisements pop up on some jerseys.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely. All these things will be on the table.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Big 12 will revisit naming rights to the conference. It's funny how K-State was close on Bramlage and then it fell apart. It sounded like the Big 12 was close with naming rights with Allstate, and that fell apart. I think when everyone gets to the line, they're like, this ain't worth it. I don't know. I think naming yourself after an arena in this market for the right price, if you're a business, could be helpful. It could. I don't know about putting an ad on the field, though. I think the only field ad that would be really effective is Ryan Gilbert kind of like laying with his hand on his head like this, and it says RyanGilbert.of. That'd be his only fan speech.
Well, he doesn't have any fans, so it doesn't matter anyway.
This is true.
So I don't know how everything's on the table, though, folks. There was a rumor going around they're going to rename the football stadium. That rumor was started by an idiot. They're not doing that.
What about you?
Yes. No, it was someone I know very well. And no, if they change anything, they might change the name of the field. That was a sale done back in 1990 or something, more than 30 years ago, with the Wagners, who ponied up $1 million of lottery winning at the exact right time, and they should be forever remembered for doing it, for the timing of it. But that naming is worth a lot more money now, and I don't think it was ever intended to be forever naming at $1 million. That it, boys?
That's it.
That's it.
I agree.
For this edition of the Powercat Podcast, we appreciate some of the different questions we got. Yeah. You guys got creative. That's why you're outstanding K-State fans. The best fans can be found at Wabash Station. I've been saying it for minutes.
And if you're not on,
you should be.
You can get 1 month for just $1.
For $1. $1. You ain't getting no naming rights for that. I'll tell you that. That's it. Back to work. Shoot around on Friday some point. I don't know. Clint Stewart's having I think brain surgery. Was that what you said? Okay. He's got something going on. He might be all wrapped up like a mummy, but he'll be there because he's a trooper. That's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for existing.
This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.